Hello, I'm Hunter Schultz, and welcome to Winning Healthcare Food Fights Without the Mess. Since November of last year, I've had the opportunity and privilege of chatting with some pretty incredible physicians. In almost every interview, I've asked them about why they left. What was the trigger? What was it about the obsolete system that made them say, take this job and to start their DPC practices? What follows are some of the responses, and I think you'll find some common threads within them, starting right now. What motivated you to say, I'm going to open up Elite?
Well, I had been introduced to the idea of membership-style medicine, or what had previously been called concierge medicine. When I was in medical school, I was lucky enough to rotate with a physician who had a private practice where he had, part of his practice was insurance-based, and part of his practice was really concierge medicine. He was charging patients like $500 a month for cell phone access and direct access to him at the time. But I was really impressed with the community that established with that group of patients, and even amongst the patients, who all kind of knew each other and knew that they were all patients of that one doctor. Ultimately just started thinking about how I could make that possible for anyone, how to make it affordable for anyone. You start running through the numbers and had the idea even right after I got out of the Army, and I was doing some ER work to pay the bills at the time, and really considered opening a practice. Again, that would be such a long story, but kind of dipped my toe in the idea at the time, and then sort of got cold feet. Because it's such a big jump, to say that we've been doing medicine a certain way for the last, 70 years or something, or, whatever. And so I'm going to, just jump off the deep end and do something totally different, was a big step. And so, with children and being married and everything, it's difficult to make that decision. So I took an employed position for a couple of years, and again, another thing that I'm really grateful for in my life, and really got a really intense look at what it's like to do everything through insurance companies and Medicare and Medicaid, and just over time became more and more disillusioned with it, and ultimately thought, I can do this. There were a lot of DPC doctors around the country that were starting to do the same thing. They'd all kind of done the same math and come up with the same numbers, and I thought, my idea that I've been having in my head now for the past 10 or 15 years it's feasible, because there are doctors around the country that are doing this. And, there were some books that were written about direct primary care, and there's some guys that, had made it onto the news and had got, had kind of gotten some national presence. And every time something like that happened, a friend of mine that knew that I was interested in that concept would forward me those articles, or somebody sent me a book and I read it, and I couldn't get the bug, out of my head. And so in May of 2018, I decided to close my practice. I worked directly with the hospital system there so that it wasn't an adversarial relationship. And they were supportive of it. They let me out of my non-compete and said, we give you our blessing. And that's one of the things that I really encourage a lot of other DPC doctors to do, is to try to, as best they can, work with their hospital systems to let them know that they don't intend to be a threat to the system. They just want to show people a different way. I was lucky enough to have a hospital system that was supportive. And so, we opened the practice. I left the practice in May of 18 with plans to open in July. And, anyone who's ever been through the build out of a clinic knows that construction workers say 2 months. They really mean like 8. And so, I got the keys to the clinic here, in December of 18, and opened formally in January of 18.
Well, first of all, I think it's worth a congratulations. I'm kind of still reeling from the fact that you started from 0 patients. That is good for you. I think that's the entrepreneurial spirit, number one. And I hope other doctors who are looking at making the switch can take have a little confidence boost from the fact that you are, you made the plunge.
Yeah. I mean, I had so much support from other direct primary care doctors, and I thought about it for a long time. It was something I had heard of in residency, but in residency, I never thought I would be opening my own practice. My plan was always to work in a federally qualified health center or a county clinic. And I worked for 2 years after residency in a health center in Philadelphia before we moved back here. And it never even occurred to me to open my own practice. I just thought direct primary care sounds really cool, but I don't think I could do that. But it just became more and more clear to me that for my family and work-life balance, it was not going to work doing the traditional route anymore. And I just had so much support from other DPC doctors. So it's still hard. I'm not going to say that it's been an easy switch, but having all of those doctors around the country as a support system to, bounce ideas off of and give you support when you're having a bad day or say, well, this is what worked for me. You could try this. It's just been great.
Is it fair to say that direct primary care enables you to live your life's purpose?
Yes, without a doubt.
It's got to make your job a lot more enjoyable.
I have a lot. The satisfaction is so much higher. It feels like I can be a doctor again.
Well, I think a lot of doctors will take encouragement knowing it can be done. You're proving the point that, take the risk.
Well, and that's my hope, and the hope, there's a gaggle of us, more than a gaggle. I guess a gaggle's 12 or 18 or 6, I don't know. But there's a group of just fiercely independent direct primary care physicians that have organized in the Direct Primary Care Alliance, and it's my privilege to be president for this and next year. And that's really our incredible passion is, every day that we show up and open our doors, we're demonstrating that for physicians who still love medicine and want to be doctors, that you can do it. You don't have to be owned. And I know that sounds really negative, but you don't have to do it within an employed construct. And that there's a way to just be a doctor. And my fear, and you kind of touched on the COVID pandemic, but that there's I would say 3 big divisions in medicine, right? There's people who are practicing in medicine who I think love it, and the job that they're working is working for them mostly, whatever that may be. And then there's people who are probably untenably at the end of their rope, and we really need to be mindful of depression and suicide. But there are people who I want to give a message of strength to say there's a life beyond medicine. And in modern times, very few people start at the age of 6 or 8 or 10 and commit themselves to a career path that they then hold themselves accountable to for the duration of their life. That's really what our culture expects of doctors, but it's not required. So I run into physicians who are excited about direct primary care, but what they're really excited about is they're just barely hanging on. And so to empower physicians who need or want to leave medicine, it's okay. But then for those who maybe just need a break, but really still love the heart of the work and still have a place in it, to know that there's other models, right? So my fear with the COVID fallout, among many, many things, is that we're going to see physicians leaving medicine who, had they maybe figured out there's a bit of a different business model a little bit sooner, might have been able to sustain themselves in this career. Because I want people to leave medicine if medicine can't give to them what they need to care for themselves. But direct primary care, at least for me, is a business model that's very far from perfect, but it really allows me to care for people in an authentic way. And that has provided so many returns for me that it brings me confidence and joy, and it sustains me.
It's empowering.
It is. And it's fun to feel like a grown-up, It sounds weird to say that, but there's a lot about the culture of healthcare where the most highly trained people in our healthcare system are treated like in the most infantile way. And it's demeaning and it's destructive. And what's most crazy about it is we have incredibly capable, incredibly tough, incredibly smart people who are in this really strange culture of abuse. My colleague Kenneth Richter, a couple of years ago, he's a DPC doc. He called it Stockholm syndrome, basically, for physicians that, or the golden handcuffs or whatever. But sometimes the thing seems okay until you're out of it, right? A lot of us maybe had a bad relationship here or there in our lives, and it didn't seem bad when we were in it. But when you actually get in a functional one, you can look back and go, what was happening? And I think that's very much happening for a lot of our medical providers. And they don't know there's an option. They don't know they can date somebody else.
So you left a big system almost a year ago now, back in February, right?
Right.
And in terms of patient care, was it a single moment or a combination of things to make you say, take this job and have a nice day?
Right. So definitely a combination of things. The access to care and that personal relationship with my patients was a big deal to me. And I had no control over my schedule or ability to enhance those relationships. Just to give you an example, when you're an employed physician, the panel size is typically around 2,500. And because I was in an office that had other doctors, I would a lot of times have to see their patients, which was fine. And it's an adequate visit. But I really wanted to focus on my patients and build my patients' relationships so that I could treat them more effectively. And direct primary care really brings that doctor-patient relationship as the most important. So it's a relationship, people over profit, I suppose.
What do you recall from, I mean, your first trip there 7-8 years ago, from your first trip to your last trip? Has it been constant or have there been changes?
Well, I will admit that, when I came back from my first year, and my wife, who's not here, but you're more than welcome to interview her because she probably has a more colorful way of describing it. I was a very angry person when I came back. Not angry at anything specifically, but really angry at our own healthcare system, that there were, and what our expectations are as healthcare consumers for the magic pill, the magic test, the magic this, the magic that. I say angry because I really don't know any other emotional word to put in there. Maybe internal angst or
Frustration.
Frustration, righteous indignation, or whatever. Where these, the folks that I had interacted with had, they had either had a medical condition that they weren't able to have addressed, or didn't have addressed, or was addressed incorrectly, and they might have had this for months on end. And I come back in the U.S. and a patient calls and says, "I've had a cold for 4 hours. What are you going to do for me?" It's like, what are you talking about? Yeah. So
Dial 1-800, you're hurting me.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have a worm coming out of a body orifice that has robbed you of 50 pounds. Consider yourself lucky. Your nose, if that makes any sense, it's sort of like that. Oh, yeah. And really, angry is not the right word, I guess. Just kind of internally frustrated with just.
You have no idea how blessed you are, sir. If you had a worm coming out of an orifice, then,
exactly.
And it's tough to say that to a patient, right?
Yeah, or just the rampant malnutrition, or not having a clean water supply, or a lot of stuff just goes on and on and on. And I come back less that way with each trip, but just realizing how blessed we are. And people can complain about the United States all they want, all day long, particularly currently they are. But the reality behind this is it's the best country in the world. People have no idea what it's like to forage for food or to find a clean water supply.
Those are some great insights to consider about your physician and the system they're in. And again, I would remind you to blame the system first and not your physician. After all, medicine's been changing for the last 20 years, but the system itself has been around since roughly 1965. And the changes since the turn of this century have been phenomenal. Genome is one example. But you don't have to take my word for it. Have a chat with your doctor about medicine's personalization and how much time it's going to take to sort through all the variables that we have now. Between genome, gut microbiome, wearable devices, there's a lot of information doctors have to sort through. And do watch their reaction when you ask them, "Where's all this time going to come from, Doc?" For Winning Healthcare Food Fights, I'm Hunter Schultz. Stay healthy, wash your hands a lot, at a minimum, and there you are.